Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is a bit of a different stream format. It actually is going out on my personal channel where I do more fiction analysis. That is, I believe it's Generatic on YouTube or at Typhon Blue on YouTube. One or the other. One of these days I'll remember and I'll tell you guys. Anyway, so today I'm here. My name is Allison and I'm with Brian. And we are going to discuss the first episode of the second season of House of Dragons. Yay!
It's House of the Dragon?
House of the Dragon. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. It's House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
The episode title is Son for a Son. And if you want to send a message at any point throughout the show, it's the usual format. Go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip because we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send, and you get the benefit of sending that comment not through YouTube's comment system. All right, so super brief recap of the entire premise of the show. Alicent versus Ratanella, or Ratella, or however you sell it, or Rataries, something like that.
Ratatouille?
Ratatouille. That's a good one, yeah. Okay, so basically we have two women fighting over the throne of Westeros. And one has acquired the throne in the traditional manner by giving birth to the king and basically becoming the regent or co-regent with her father. The other has gotten the throne by virtue of the late king calling her or declaring that she is his heir because he died without sons, or at least his first wife died in the process of trying to give him a son, and he decided as a result of that his desire for a son had killed his beloved wife, and in penitence he would give the throne to his daughter and support her in that. So already right off the bat, the most interesting character is the dead king, who's been gone for three episodes at least now. But anyway, so now we're dealing with these two women finally, sorta, maybe getting the point of deciding what they're going to do. Like whether or not they're going to abdicate or go forward or fight or what. Like, I mean, basically this episode is watching two women vacillate and increase the blast radius of the conflict by demanding that everyone in Westeros choose a side. So I'm not sure if they intended to paint this portrait of female leadership, but they have definitely painted a strong portrait of female leadership. And that portrait is not flattering. So
yeah.
Neither side has either decided to capitulate or commit. What they're doing now is basically they're just indecisive, suffering from terminal fear of missing out, FOMO. You know, I don't know what's going on. So they keep making decisions consistent with declaring war. So in other words, in a normal setting, what they're doing is basically saying, I'm declaring war on you. So for example, Ratanella has pursued a blockade of Alicent's main city or main trading route. Okay, that is casus belli. That is cause for war. So in any normal circumstance, at that point, you have declared war, right? You're blockading your enemy. You are essentially sending out messengers to get the people who have declared allegiance, the lords who've declared allegiance to throw in with you. This is all obvious indications that you are about to go to war, right? And yet, Ratanella is not either making a definitive declaration that she's committed to the war, therefore we can prosecute it now and get ahead of the momentum of the enemy and hopefully get it over with quickly. She's neither making that declaration nor is she delegating to somebody who can make that declaration and then prosecute the war. Like, she's off having emotions And I'm like, yeah, it is sad that you got your son killed. Yeah, you got your son killed by being irresponsible instead of just saying, okay, we're at war. Let's try to end this quickly. Call up the soldiers that are immediately in don't go through all the lords of Westeros and demand they take sides like some kind of schoolyard female conflict. Just take the soldiers you have, hit fast, hit quick, get it over with. I mean, even like there was a scene in the previous last episode where Ratinella's aunt, Rhaenys, actually took her dragon, went to the crowning ceremony, and flambéed a whole bunch of innocent spectators, presumably just common people who were watching the king being crowned. Okay, so give it a little bit of backstory.
Okay.
Alicent's claim to the throne is through her son. Now, that son is the heir, or the male heir. Well, not the male heir, because he didn't actually, the late king didn't actually declare him the heir. That son is, according to Westeros law, the heir. However, the king chose the daughter from his first wife. All right, so Alicent's claim to the throne is the son she had with the king. However, the king very explicitly declared his firstborn daughter, his heir. On his deathbed, he made some incoherent mumblings about regretting that, and then Alicent took that as justification to put her son on the throne. Well, I guess Ratinella was having an orgy somewhere, or screwing
probably
her men-at-arms, something. I don't know. Ratinella was off doing something. And Ratinella's aunt, who was the first woman overlooked for the throne. So I guess she's Hillary in this scenario. So Dragon Hillary goes to the coronation of Alicent's son and kills a whole bunch of people. And not even like soldiers, just guests of the coronation. She's just like, yeah, I'm going to kill all of you, probably commoners, probably minor nobility that have nothing to do with any of this. I'm just going to flambe all of you. Not Alicent and her son, which would have ended everything right there, like everything. And honestly, I know there's a little bit more of a concern over regicide, even though she doesn't consider Alicent's son the regent. You're already demonstrating that you're willing to murder vast numbers of people to apparently make a point, express a tantrum, whatever you were doing, but you can't kill the two people who will end this? Like it doesn't even make sense. So she flambés this whole bunch of people. They don't end it there. Instead, we get these long, drawn-out scenes of, well, I want to see how popular I am. I want to make sure everybody is involved in our conflict. We can't do a conflict alone. It's like going to the bathroom. We have to have all the lords involved. We all have to powder our noses. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And this is getting really frustrating because they have moment after moment after moment where they can take the initiative and finish this before it gets bigger. And that's what's happening. Because these two women are vacillating, this conflict is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So what's interesting is, because this is all the story of how this particular dynasty fell. And I'm like, now, here is the really interesting question. Are the writers aware this is what they're writing? Because
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, if this is based on some of Martin's work, and if that's what he was doing, and if they're aware of what they're showing, the story that they're telling.
I've had some people argue with me and say that I point out that the characters are losers who are not proactive and they're vacillating, and they argue with me by saying, well, that's what Martin intended. Well, okay, then congratulations. Why are you arguing with me? Yes, this is definitely a portrait. It is a portrait of two women whose selfishness, solipsism, and self-involvement, and simultaneous with their their low risk tolerance and their fear of missing out is causing a conflict that could just be between two branches of one house and their retained soldiers, like their vassals, and they're turning it into a conflict a conflagration that will burn an entire continent to the ground. Okay, yes, if that's your intent to show that this is this is a pitfall of women in leadership, bravo. That's excellent. You've done a very good job. Is that your intent? Is your intent to say, hey, when women are in leaders, this is a specific issue with female leadership because they cannot make a decision, right? They want to get consensus from all their lords, right? They cannot act. They just stop at the moment of ending it. Like there's a moment where you can end the conflict, just finish it off, and they just stop. Now, I don't know, like that could be, hey, this is a problem with female leaders. They don't shit or get off the pot, right? They cannot make a final clear decision and just push through with it. And just because, they don't want to be seen as evil or mean or because they, whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Or is this because it's just bad writing? Like, is this just like they don't know or they aren't even aware of what they're writing? Because like they're taking a conflict that could be settled with a couple thousand soldiers, men, basically. These two women are taking a conflict that could be settled with a couple thousand soldiers, and they're turning it into a conflict that could destroy an entire country. And I'm watching this process and I'm like, okay, is that your message here? Is that because the two so-called evil guys, the prince who was last season raping handmaids or maidens or maids in the castle. I don't know if he's still intended to be characterized this way, because this is the other thing. The characterization of people just changes from moment to moment, episode to episode. So he's now seems to be sort of ineffectual, like dissolute, but not particularly bad meaning is the thing that they seem to be hitting for. I don't know. Maybe the psycho rapist will come back at some point when that makes more immediate, shocking soap opera sense. But regardless, he's actually saying, we need to commit to this. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. These women are making decisions consistent with war. In any normal world, everybody would know that they were at war. You don't call in your lords if you're not at war, if you're not preparing for war. You don't blockade unless you're preparing for war. You don't put your son on the throne when there's an actual legal heir unless you intend to do some war, okay? So we all know by their actions, these women have declared war. But for whatever reason, they refuse to commit to it. And there, like I said, there are two male characters, the husband of the princess who was declared the heir, and the son of the queen who sort of usurped the throne. And these two characters are like, what, we got to do it. Like, every decision you're making is consistent with a conflagration. Do you want to win this? Right? Do you want to win this? Because we got to move. We got to move fast. We got to make a decision. We got to start the process of prosecuting a war. And every time they bring it up, they're slapped down. And it's like, are you kidding me? Okay, so the two characters that are actually deciding, okay, we could kill 1,000 men, or we could kill 100,000 men. Let's do this now, get it over with, keep the death toll in the thousands rather than the tens or hundreds of thousands. And the women are like, but I don't know. I know I'm doing a blockade, but am I really declaring war? Can I have it both ways? Can I have war and not war? Can I have all the benefits of war, but all the benefits of peace? Can I have all the benefits of everybody loving me and still force them to obey me? It's like, And so the two characters that I'm actually sympathetic for are the ones who are getting shut down because they keep saying, we need to treat this seriously and we need to end it before it gets bigger. So again,
Yeah.
women in leadership, they're taking a conflagration, a fight that could just have a death toll in like the thousands or maybe 1,000, and they're slowly building it through their insecurities, their inability to properly risk assess or make decisions or understand systems. They're taking a conflict that could kill 1,000 and turning it into a conflict that could kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, get peasants involved, decimate like peaceful populations, because everybody is now in this fight over who is the queeniest and most beautiful. It's like, okay. Yet if that's your intent, bravo, it's brilliant. That's a brilliant portrait of how even supposedly well-meaning female leaders suck.
Yeah, I don't think I think that if they were confronted on that, they probably wouldn't think that they were making. Well, I don't think they would admit to making a statement about female leadership specifically, because I think, like, isn't the general tone of all of Martin's work around, people, it's all about just like grasping at power and everyone's a tyrant, and women are there are no females or males. There's just like tyrannical psychos that run things. I mean, that's what I would think. I don't think they would say, let's demonstrate how bad leaders women are. It just so happens that they wanted to have women leaders, or they had women leaders, if it's based on, something he wrote. But they also, but they also were like, well, we also got to get across that central message of like, I don't know, medieval times really sucked, or whatever it is that they're trying to say.
Okay, yeah. Let me address that. Like I said, it's entirely possible, depending on how they deal with this. It's entirely possible that this is a legitimate portrait. It's a little bit aggravating to watch because nobody really wants to watch non-proactive protagonists or antagonists or characters. Period. And what I mean by that is, when people are defending these characters, they often, to me, like in previous comments, they have defended Alicent and Ratnella, and they say, well, look at all the external circumstances that they're dealing with. That's actually a really bad sign, because we watch protagonists to see how they deal with their external circumstances. So if you're focusing on making excuses for a character based on their external circumstances, instead of being like, oh, wow, that was so awesome the way they dealt with X or Y or Z, that's pretty cool. And you don't have to be a badass to deal with X or Y or Z. For example, if Ratnella was making really smart choices in prosecuting this war, we would be talking about them instead of talking about all of the excuses, what she's dealing with, how much pressure she has on her, and all of this stuff. If she was proactive, we'd be talking about how cool it is that she's been dealing with these problems, because that's what we like to see in a story. And yes, you make it even better. You can make it difficult to deal with those problems. You can give people a lot of internal strife over dealing with the problem. That's fine. But but what's interesting is how they deal with it, what they think about it, how they deal with it. And watching a character not deal with their problems is aggravating. And I mean, if that's what they're showing, because the thing is that male characters in the previous seasons, the previous episodes, they were proactive. They dealt with problems. Sometimes they dealt with them very stupidly, but they still dealt with them. So we were discussing their actions in response to external circumstance. Now all we're doing is discussing the external circumstance, because Alicent and Ratnella are taking action. They aren't making decisive decisions. They're not making smart choices. They're just experiencing and emoting. And that is frustrating to watch. Yeah. Now, like I said, it could be the experience of just reading some Russian literature. So mea culpa, that's what they were. That's what they were aiming for, and that's what they got. Okay, fair enough. I'm just saying that's what it is. And also, this is a definite difference in how they're portraying male characters versus female characters. Alicent and Ratinella don't do anything. They don't take actions. They just have grievances. They do not make decisions. They just have emotions. All right.
Yeah.
This is a very different way. And again, there is a gender breakdown here. We got the two evil male characters, Aemond and Daemon, who are saying,
those are the names. My goodness.
Yes.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry. Aegon.
Aegon.
Aemon. Aegon.
I think Aegon's the second one.
Aegon Targaryen.
By the way, guys, if you're a writer, please don't do this. Don't make so many similar syllables in the same letter in the beginning for all.
Isn't that kind of how Tolkien named his characters though? Like there was like Theoden, and then he had a son named Theodred, and then there was Éomer and Éowyn. I mean, I guess there weren't a lot of them, but there was, because I read the Silmarillion, and there's a lot of that in there, and it was a little hard to track like what was going on. But Silmarillion is dense.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and but I mean, in this case, like, there's no real excuse for it because, okay, if you're gonna have a lot of characters, try to make their first letter distinct so people can can decipher between them. There are too many Ratineries or Ratinés or Ratinellas in this, and it's really aggravating. But you know, like that's just I guess it's a minor pet peeve. It would just made it a little bit easier to follow everything that's happening. And there's a lot happening, so you want to make that as easy to follow as possible. But regardless, my overall point is that Aemond or Aegon and my doggo's back. Aemond and Daemon are the ones who are actually being proactive. They're saying we need to prosecute this war. And I can't emphasize this enough. The women are making choices. Where they are making choices, they are demonstrating that they're fighting a war. Like they are doing things consistent with giving the other side cause to fight. So they're giving all of their actions are consistent. Like if you sat them down and you said, okay, if you take this action, it will be considered cause for war, right? You know, so they're doing that. They're just not committing to the war. So it's almost like they want to be able to gain the benefit of the conflict without prosecuting the conflict. Whereas the two men are like, no, we got to actually deal with this conflict. We got to prosecute the conflict. We need to pursue this aim that you have in fact done. So the women are like, but can I just do the things consistent with declaring war, but not have to deal with war? You know, can I just do things that impede on another house's sovereignty without actually declaring war on that house? And it's like, no, you have declared war. Now we must fight it. And the two men are like, no, you have declared war. Now we must fight it. And they keep getting shouted down. And each time they get shouted down, I'm like, I'm on your side, dude. Like the king goes to the meeting, like they call it I don't know, it doesn't matter. They go to the meeting of the advisors, and he's like, well, let's start fighting this war. And his wife and his mother, who basically started this whole shitting thing, says, no, for whatever reason. No, you're bloodthirsty. I think that's the intent. They're trying to pretend like these guys are bloodthirsty. And then he gets shouted down. He actually gets shouted down by his grandfather too, like his mother's father, and because he's the hand, or like the second in command, and he basically tells him to shut up, boy. And he does so in almost the entire first episode of the season. It's, shut up, boy, is pretty much the only thing he says to the king. And for some reason, his daughter, after he basically says, shut up, boy, but, you know, a little more diplomatically, his daughter comes to him and he's like, I have a grievance. You didn't support me. I'm like, did we watch the same meeting, Allison?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm pretty sure Otto is her father. Otto did the whole thing like, you're both right, but you are actually wrong. You know what that is? You know, like, you're both right. Alicent is right. Aemond, the king, is right, but the king is actually wrong. You know? And she's like, why didn't you support me? Well, did you not notice he did that thing that you do when you're trying to not be like really confrontational, but you're still shutting someone down. You're like, oh, you're both right, but you're actually more wrong. So it's like,
Yeah.
you're both right, but you're the one who's wrong. So he's like, Alicent, you're right. Aemond, you're right. And Alicent's like, what, does that make me wrong? And then he's like, but Aemond, you're actually the one who's wrong. And then Alicent's like, I can't believe it. She said Aemond was right, period. I'm like, you're such a child. You're such a freaking child. I'm like, what the hell is your purpose? To just sit there and have grievances? Oh, I can't believe what you did. Like, what? Otto made it easier for you to get your way in a diplomatic manner? I mean, I'm like watching this and I'm pretty sure everybody's like, oh my God, he's such a patriarchal oppressor. And I'm thinking like, wow, he's doing God's work handling this tantrumy child. And so she confronts him on that. And then on the Ratinella's side, Daemon is basically saying, okay, we got to fight. Right? You are doing things consistent with declaring war, right? That means we must get ready to fight. All right. You can't have it both ways. No. So let's do this. And he gets confronted by Rhaenys, the woman who took her dragon and killed like a couple hundred people just to make a point. He gets confronted by her and she talks about, he's like, we got to make these decisions. The queen has to queen, that's why she's queen. She must queen. And she's not queening. So somebody has to do something. Like, you are doing things consistent with declaring. In fact, this woman is the one who's primarily responsible for the blockade. And if she has any understanding of politics or strategy, she's got to know that is cause for war, right? That is, you don't do a blockade unless this is now war, right? We are now at war. And so she's doing this blockade and she comes back and he's like, we got a war, we're at war. We got a war. And she's like, but the queen is grieving. You should not do anything because she is queen and she must make the decision and she cannot make the decision because she grieves. And I'm like, you just killed a couple hundred people to make your point. You could have gone like 2 people more and ended this whole conflict. And now you're going up to the one guy who's talking any kind of sense and you're giving him a line of bullshit about how the queen has to put her filles before being queen. Okay. If you want to do that, do not be queen. Huh? Right?
Yeah.
You want to do that? Go be a princess in a tower. If you are queen, you have chosen to make decisions that impact lots of people's lives. And her inability, her vacillation, her rejection of making this decision of prosecuting the war is ensuring that more sons are going to die. Okay? More people are going to die as this conflagration gets bigger. So Daemon's saying, okay, can we just deal with this? Can we deal with this when we only have to sacrifice 1,000 men? Or are you 2 ladies, one of whom is perfectly willing to kill hundreds of people who are totally innocent? Are you 2 ladies going to sit on your asses and let this get bigger until we have to sacrifice tens of thousands of men to resolve it? And again, I'm pretty sure that the narrative, and we're going to be reading the Garden article that probably will confirm my impression, is presenting Daemon as the bad guy. Okay? Not the person who's doing everything, like who's basically taking action to declare war but refuses to actually end it, but the guy who wants to end the war that's being declared by this woman. It's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy that makes sense. It's like she has initiated a project that is putting a whole bunch of people, in the line of fire, in dire straits, and a problem. Like she's creating a gigantic problem for a whole bunch of people. And when the guy says you need to make choices, this project needs to have decisions made now, she essentially says, "You're so mean. What about my feelings?" I'm like, how many men have to die for your feelings? Like, how many? Do you really think they're that valuable? Yeah, I know you're grieving, but you chose to be queen. Unchoose being queen. Okay? And oh, good Lord. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's look at the Guardian article. Let's see what they have to say.
Well, it's pretty long. I'll put it on the screen.
Sure.
Here. All right, just a moment. I do have to.
I have not seen this article yet, so this is exciting.
It's long. They're gonna do like beat by beat, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So, all right, let me just move this over so you guys can see it. Okay. So it says House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 1 recap, almost unbearably tense and bloody. With secret affairs, severed dragon wings, and one angry outburst leading to the most unspeakable act of violence, there is now no way to avoid all-out war. Brace yourselves. Well, I get so how many episodes are left in the season is probably a good question to ask too.
You know what it is? Because this show ends with the war is sort of declared when one of Alicent's sons gets killed by one of Ratinella's sons gets killed by Alicent's son.
Mm-hmm.
And then Daemon interprets the queen basically walking into a meeting and saying, I want Alicent's second son as a desire for assassination. So he pursues that. And I think that what they're trying to show in this show is that the male characters are the ones who are causing all the bad shit to happen.
Yeah.
Without actually, so they want women to be in power but not be responsible, you know? Like,
I mean, again, I don't know if George R. R. Martin wrote this, and so they're just sort of taking what he wrote and they're
he wrote a sort of like
adapting it. Or
yeah, they are adapting something he wrote. So I think he wrote like the overall, like in summary, the events that happened.
So he kind of like gave. Okay, so it sounds like his contribution.
Silmarillion. So
right. Is that a book that's available, like people can look at, or
it is.
Okay?
I think it's Fire and Ice.
So they're taking something and they're making a show out of it.
Expanding it. They're making a show out of it. But I get the feeling that the real thing that they're trying to do is not. They're trying to have women in power, but of course not making any decisions that would be negative, because of course we're leading towards a gigantic civil war. And we don't want to pin that on the ladies. So let's pin it on the men. But what ends up happening is no matter what, these women are going to make choices that are bringing this conflict to a head, like even by not making a choice, which is really frustrating. Like, all right, here's the problem. Rhaenys essentially declared war when she killed hundreds of people during the coronation of Aemond or whatever. Of Alicent's first son. Okay, she declared war there. Period. Alicent declared at least intentions to malevolent intentions when she opposed the law of Westeros, or at least the express wishes of the dead king, to put her son on the throne. Essentially, a coup. Right. All right. So these actions mean war. But the problem is the women are not acknowledging that. And because they're not acknowledging that, the conflict grows ever bigger, more bloody, and more destructive. Okay? And then we have men in their retinue who are saying, we need to stop this. And they are not listening to those men. But they are not doing anything else either. So their inaction is actually making everything worse. And I think that could be actually clever writing. Maybe it was on Martin's part in the original, if he did that much detail. It could also be they don't want to show a woman doing bad stuff or making bad decisions. Which is interesting because, Dany did some pretty bad stuff in the and so did Cersei. I don't know. So, but it definitely is a thing. Okay, let's read the Guardian article.
All right. Well, it's pretty long, so I don't know if you want me to just because look, this is the Guardian article.
Let's just go until we get annoyed.
All right. Spoiler alert, this recap is for people watching The House of the Dragon. Do not read on unless you have watched season 2, episode 1. You must accept that the path to victory now is one of violence. Welcome one, welcome all. If you know your Vermax from your Vagar and your Ser Eric from your Ser Arik, you're in the right place. 20 long months ago, we left the 7 kingdoms of Westeros teetering on the brink of war. Aegon Targaryen, Tom Glyn Carney, had just been hastily crowned, leaving the rightful heir, his older sister, Rhaenyra, I'm just gonna butcher these names and I don't care, exiled on Dragonstone and plotting her next move. Any plans she might have made were blown out of or indeed into the water. However, when a mid-air dragonback dust up between Aegon's younger, punchier, one-eyed brother, Prince Aemond, and Rhaenyra's plucky second son, Prince Lucerys.
Wow, he had a personality?
I guess he was plucky, apparently.
Plucky.
Sent the latter tumbling to his death in the narrow sea.
You know, plucky is basically the insert here of personality traits, especially
it's
for
like
fantasy.
a generic
it's
thing.
Generic. It's like he has a personality.
When I hear plucky, I think written by Joss Whedon, like just like sarcastic, and they're always like sniping, you know.
No, he doesn't even have that much personality. Like think.
Well, I'm sure they don't, but that's what I think of when people say that. When I hear that word described, I mean they're basically like talking about someone who is snarky, you know. I'm not saying that this character is. I'm just saying that's what I think of when I hear the word plucky. But anyway, well, nigh on 2 years have passed in our world, but in Westeros time has stood still. Rhaenyra is still mourning, Aemond is still smirking, and poor Aegon is still trying to wrap his head around the whole being king thing. There has been one notable development, though. The theme music may be the same, but the opening credit sequence, which in season 1 comprised a murky series of blood-filled channels, has been replaced by a much more pleasing Bayou-style animated tapestry, cementing the connections between the world of Westeros and medieval history, specifically the 12th century War of Succession in England and Normandy, known as the Anarchy.
Oh, so this is actually specifically based on... Okay, all right.
Duty is sacrifice. It eclipses all things, even blood. In the previous recap, I expressed a hope that the second season would be less claustrophobic than the first, less confined to gloomy keeps and citadels. Westeros is vast after all. For the first handful of scenes here, that wish appears to be coming true as a raven wings its way through dense forests and across rocky moorlands to the familiar castle of Winterfell. What?
Oh, this is just a waste of time to read.
Yeah, do you want me to just jump to the part where they have opinions? Because it looks like they're just describing things. Okay, so studio bound, right? Confined to Dragonstone. When the king speaks, your grace. Let me see.
No. Actually, okay. Let me. I can figure. I probably should read this because I can figure out what's worth reading because I've watched the show. All right.
Yeah. Do you want me to scroll down? Are you looking at my screen or are you looking?
No. Oh yeah. Scroll down a bit to at the bottom. Have when the king speaks, your grace, all hear it.
All right. So it's where meanwhile in King's Landing, right there. Is that the first paragraph?
No.
When the king speaks, your grace, all hear it, and then there's
just a bit above that. The 2 paragraphs above that.
Oh, I confined to Dragonstone. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, from there, the episode is largely studio bound as one by one we are reintroduced to the key players in each faction. The Greens, led by the scheming hand of the king, Otto Hightower, and his daughter, the Dowager Queen, Alicent, and the Blacks, notably Rhaenyra's uncle and husband, the king consort Daemon, and their longtime allies, Princess Rhaenys. That is the one who killed like a couple hundred people to protest the coronation of Alicent's son, and Lord Corlys Verulam. Confined to Dragonstone, Daemon is restless, eager to take the fight to the Greens by ambushing Aemond and claiming a son for a son. But Rhaenys isn't so sure. Valyrian's ships have already blockaded King's Landing, and they are accruing more allies. Good Lord. Anyway, the queen is absent, searching for the remains of her child. The moment when Rhaenyra finally discovers the proof that she needs alongside the severed wing of Luke's fallen dragon, Anrax, is the first affecting moment of the season. No, it isn't. I don't give a fuck. And then she goes and she says, get Aemond, like, go get the second son that killed my son. And Damon does. But of course, they want to keep it, so they want plausible deniability, right? So they make it sort of obscure why she said, "Oh, go! I want Aemond." She came into the meeting disheveled from her grief, and she said, "I want Aemond," and then Daemon is like, "I know what you mean." So we now it's all on Daemon, because you can't have a woman take responsibility. Oh, good Lord. Okay, so when the king speaks, your grace, all hear it. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, siege defenses are going up. Still smarting from the perceived treachery of his identical twin, Sir Eric, the Kingsguard knight, Sir Eruk, towards the battlements, paying particular attention to the massive dragon-spearing scorpion mounted on the city walls. Inside the keep, the formerly restless Aegon seems to have been sobered by his unexpected coronation. He's trying, apparently, to be a decent father to his heir, Daenerys, and a decent ruler to his people, promising coin to the blacksmiths who labor to keep the soldiers armed, and offering to return the tithed flock of a struggling shepherd, until Otto points out that if he keeps trying to do the decent thing, everyone will expect the same treatment. God forbid. Okay, so Otto can point out to Aemond what is patently obvious. Sometimes you have to sacrifice, you have to make a decisive decision to avoid things escalating and getting worse. And yet, this principle is not applied to the two female rulers. Nobody tells them, you got to make a choice here, otherwise things are going to get significantly worse. And not just for you, because, well, not just for the people you don't care about, which are all the people that support you, but for you too. Like, you might fail this and die. And the bigger you make this conflict, the less you can just be like, yeah, actually, you know what? I'll accept exile. Go send me into the tower. I'll accept house arrest. And the more likely you are going to be executed. So, I mean, these men are basically saying, let's contain this problem now while it can be contained. And the women are not making a decision. Because they want it both ways.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Okay.
Then they're trying to have the representation, but also still tell their story about debauched elites.
Okay, elsewhere in the keep, trouble is brewing. Alicent tries, but not very hard, to extract herself from an affair with the brooding royal fancier Sir Criston Cole, under the swiveling gaze of her cold-blooded, club-footed advisor, Lord Larys Strong. Okay, when I read TV tropes, there's a lot of shade that's thrown towards Sir Criston Cole. But I want to remind everyone that he got punked out by Ratonella in the first season. I mean punked out. That means raped into compliance, by the way. Graped into compliance. Like, he is her Kingsguard at the time, he was her Kingsguard. So he is 100% responsible for her well-being. So all of the issues of men being in a situation where, they are like, somebody says, oh, he hurt me, are even more on him. Okay. By his oaths. And she goes to him after being sexually frustrated by her uncle, and she basically molests him. And when he says no, she doesn't take with that power differential, like, she holds life and death over him, right? If she's unhappy, he gets his head chopped off. With that particular power differential, you should probably take the first no. But she didn't. She kept going. By any feminist definition, that's rape. In fact, there's a lot of non-feminists who would consider that to be rape, right? So he got punked out by her, and now Alicent is now having a ride on the local punk, and everybody is like, oh my God, he's such a sleaze. He's violating his oaths. Same situation, my dears. She has power of life and death over him. He can't say no. It's particularly hilarious when she says, we should stop this. And he's like, well, I don't have an opinion. I'm just being raped here. Whatever you want, my liege. And I just can't believe it, because it really speaks to something that's gone wrong in millennial women's brains, that they don't see this as a problem. for Alicent and for Ratonella with their behavior, like their exploitative behavior. I mean, it's fine. I know if this is intended to be a demonstration of a women exploiting a man sexually, that's fine. Okay, they've done it with men, but it's not recognized as such. It's nobody's like, oh my God, maybe you should lay off this poor fucker. Like just, and again, he had a vow of celibacy, which he is repeatedly expected to violate, and everybody puts the blame on him, not the women who have life and death over him, who apparently aren't taking no for an answer. Like he did, like honestly, he had no opinion when she said we should stop this, like except to look stricken. I'm like, this is terrifying. And it really speaks to the fact that millennial women are twice as likely to use a weapon to rape than any other group of people. But anyway, moving on from that. All right, as the loudest voice for restraint in the Green contingent, restraint. Oh, good Lord. This is not restraint. This is like, oh, you have stage 1 cancer. We could nuke it now with some chemo and radiation, or you could wait and practice restraint. That's what this is. This isn't restraint. It's cowardice. Alicent still harbors hopes that all-out war might be avoided.
Yeah. I wish I had the Windows freezing up sound right here that I play it, but I don't have it.
Alicent still harbors hopes that an all-out war might be avoided. This is like somebody with a flamethrower going through like a matchbox tinder house. Like just everything is dry and perfect, and just setting the tapestries on light, setting the carpet on light, setting the couches on light, setting the roof on light. And somebody comes in and they're like, could we put this out? Like we could, and they're like, no, let's practice some restraint. Like what I'm really hoping that the fire will go out by itself. Oh, by the way, I got to light fire to that wooden bed frame over there. I mean, this literally, she is going and making war more and more likely, or more and more inevitable.
Yeah.
And she's saying, well, maybe we can avoid it. Well, yes, Alicent, stop setting fire to the furniture. Maybe we can avoid a conflagration that takes out the whole house. Sure. Like, I mean, it's hilarious. She's just doing things that are obvious declarations of war, right? Obvious, starting with putting her son on the throne, right? Doing things that are obvious declarations of war, but when her advisors say, okay, let's prosecute this war that you are obviously declaring, she's like, but okay, then maybe we can avoid war. What that means is, Alicent, what that means is you want to punch someone and continue to punch them, but avoid a fight with them. You go, why can't I just continue to punch this person? But I don't want to have a fight. I don't want them to punch back. Like, that's what this is. I don't want them to punch back. I just want to keep punching them. What's wrong with that? You guys are bloodthirsty. Ugh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
And a misstep like being discovered in bed with the Lord Commander of the King's Guard is the last thing she needs. I don't think anybody's going to give a fuck. Queen Elizabeth screwed around. People just turned their head unless the guy started to blab, in which case she'd cut his head off. But, there's just all you have to do. Okay, lady, don't worry about it. If people start to notice, you just cut his head off. Like, what's the big deal? Like, all of you Westeros lords have no respect for any kind of lords and ladies have no respect for life. Okay. Nonetheless, as the folk of Westeros have learned many times, the royal heart wants what it wants, as do the royal lords. Okay, this guy can't say no, guys. This guy can't say no. And honestly, if this is actually consistent with history, she'll just cut his head off when he becomes an inconvenience. So there you go. That love, everyone. Love. Sort of.
It's storytelling, guys. That's storytelling.
Praying mantis love. Well, no, but this is like that. I'm discovering more and more what the appeal. I mean, not personally. I don't have a personal connection to this content, but in analyzing it, people are explaining its appeal to me. So apparently the appeal is a bunch of sociopathic losers in a downward spiral. Okay, I'm not really interested in that. Because I'm more interested in watching clever setups and payoffs and character arcs that really get you invested, even if they're negative, even if they're downward, character arcs that play out in an interesting way. Not so much like dramatic reenactment of sociopathy. It's not something that is my cup of tea, let's say. She holds love for our enemy. That makes her a fool. Oh, good Lord. They're also playing this kind of lesbian kind of thing between Ratnella and Alicent, which I didn't get. I didn't get a hell of a lot of any kind of intimacy, emotional intimacy between them, but we saw them cuddle, so that's enough for us, right? Two women cuddling, because not only does the queen follow her loins, but so does the audience. On the black side, the restraining voice is that of Queen Rhaenyra, whose emotional kinship with her former friend turned bitter rival. Do you see what they're saying? The restraining voice. The restraining voice is the two women.
Yeah.
So they want these two women to be at the center of the conflict, but they also want these two women to be restraining people from the conflict. So they're basically passive aggressively getting these groups of men into a fight and then saying, but don't fight. Don't fight. Why are you fighting, boys? Oh, you're such boys. On the black side, the restraining voice is that of Queen Rhaenyra. I don't know how to pronounce that. Why do you make me suffer? Whose emotional kinship with her former friend?
It's Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra. Yeah.
Okay, you look at that, how it's spelled.
There's no T though, and you're putting a T in there.
Yeah, I know.
It's just you can just leave out the H and the E because they're just trying to sound exotic, and it's just Rhaenyra.
Okay. These people discriminate against the dyslexic. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Whose emotional
fair
kinship,
enough.
and I'd like Ratnella better. Whose emotional kinship, Ratnella and Ratnays, with her former friend turned bitter rival, is highlighted in a lovely scene cross-cutting between the immolation of Lucerys remains and Alicent lighting candles for the slain in the sept of King's Landing. Whose emotional kinship. No, that's not how you establish emotional kinship. You establish it with a scene of Alicent and Ratnella saying, hey, isn't it going to be awesome for us to be friends forever? What will we do when we're old women? Stuff like that. Like, you establish it by showing that they had some kind of hope or goal for the relationship in the future. Something that we could invest in when it's lost.
Yeah.
Not moody, Instagram mood boards. Okay. Little does Rhaenyra know that any hopes... Rhaenyra. Yes, I'm trying. Any hopes that she holds for a bloodless conclusion are about to be shattered. A single angry remark. You see that? Do you see how they're deflecting responsibility? A single angry remark, I want Aemon Targaryen, sets Daemon on the path of vengeance. Do you remember how Otto gave that whole lecture about when a king speaks, everyone listens? Doesn't that also apply to a queen? When a queen speaks, everyone listens. Shouldn't Ratinella be aware of the impact of her words as queen? Like, I know that
Yeah.
it's horrible that she has to put herself aside as a person in order to be queen, but she chose that. If you chose
Yeah.
it, you live up to it. Sets Daemon on the path of revenge. But I think what they're trying to get is that it is actually the men who are forcing all this stuff to happen. So it's the men's fault.
Men existing. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Men.
even though by definition, the women, if it's the men's fault, it's because the women aren't taking charge. They are in the positions of leadership. If the men under your power do these things as a result of your strange utterings or your murmurings, and like that is on you because you are the boss. You are where the buck stops. Acting on information provided by his former paramour, and the fact that she doesn't recognize this or she's not taking responsibility for it makes it even worse. He tracks down a pair of likely thugs, a gold cloak and a rat catcher, giving them coin and instructions to murder Aemon by any means necessary. And if they can't find him, well, that question goes unanswered. From there, it's a case of finding out in precisely what way and how horribly the plan is going to go wrong. Oh yeah, I remember the assassin scene. The scenes of the assassin sneaking through one plush royal chamber after another were almost unbearably tense. That's a word for it. I was watching it and I'm like, have we suddenly wandered into the set of the Three Stooges? Like, I mean, literally, these assassins are just like, they're wandering around all over no guards, nowhere. Not a single guard, not a single maid. And I know that they're supposed to have very few people on staff because, I don't know, the staff went with Ratinella to her island, which seems implausible, but whatever. It's not explained very well. I mean, I think Otto might have, her spy master might have fired a bunch of her staff, so she's short-staffed. But that doesn't explain why there's almost nobody in the palace except for one maid who watches these obvious like these two characters are comically suspicious. You know? It couldn't be more obvious if they had like neon signs. They carried neon signs over their heads saying obviously up to no good. And they just sneak through the throne room of all places, no guards. Like the throne room, no guards.
Yeah.
The king is on the throne drunk, no guards anywhere. I'm sorry, no matter how short-staffed you are going to have somebody guarding the king. So they sneak through the throne room, no guards. Nobody even stops them. It's like, who are you? Nobody even has a system. Like, no one has a system to know who is going. Okay, all right. So they wander through the throne room. They wander into they wander through the back rooms of the throne. And then they wander to the chamber, and I mean, like they're just like freaking going all over the place. They're like, hey, we want to do an assassination here. Where are the royal brats? Like,
yeah.
And then they have a loud argument in like the vestibule up where the stairs are going up to the queen's chambers, and I'm like. They have a loud argument over how to find one of the royal children.
Yeah.
It could only have been better as if like a clutch of guards had wandered past and been like, hey, you over there, what you doing there? And then be like, hey, how do we get to how do we get to the place where you keep the royal children? Hey, we're trying to figure that out. And they're like, oh yeah, just take the stairwell up. Second left on your right, or second door on your right. It would have been, it was just freaking ludicrous. It was absolutely absurd. There was no excuse for this. None whatsoever. I'm sorry, guys. That was no excuse. But I thought it was freaking hilarious. Oh man, that was a high point. I was laughing my ass off. Okay, who would they encounter first, and how bloody would it be? Well, certainly they didn't encounter common sense at any point. In retrospect, it was obvious. Aegon's love for little Jaehaerys. Of course.
Jaehaerys.
Jay Harris, rule of drama, folks. It always has to be the kid you care about, right? Had been heavily signposted earlier. Oh, yeah, that's right. Return of the four bricking. Like in Martin's first book, which I did not enjoy except for the Daenerys part, and some of Arya's part. Martin doesn't seem to like foreshadowing so much as forebricking, like just hitting you over the head with what's about to happen.
Oh,
And
I
this
see.
show is no different. As had the parlous mental and emotional state of the child's mother. Parlous? Okay, slap the thesaurus out of your hand. Helena. The Sophie's choice she was offered by the killers felt like a push too far. We were already witness to the murder of a child. Still, the consequences couldn't be clearer. This means war. I'm sorry, it's not actually really dramatic when it's comedy. I'm sorry. Like, and then they just went like just the sound of them killing the child. It was just like over the top.
Oh,
like,
really?
Gurgling bone. Like, oh my God. I know I sound horrible, but it was so over the top that I didn't buy into it. Plus, it was preceded by this comedic infiltration.
Yeah.
At that point, I'm ready for a laugh. Although I'll have to admit, the autistic girl running away with her surviving child was a little harrowing. And then she burst into her mother raping Sir Kristen again. Oh boy, Westeros, you never fail to you never fail to make me wish I got my last hour back. All right, additional notes. It's a pity that we presumably don't get to see any more of the easygoing King Aegon. His laid-back leadership and gang of Jack the Lad courtiers with an unlikely pleasure in an otherwise miserable episode. Boy, that's a lot of truth. Otherwise miserable episode. I'm feeling that line. Yeah, and you're right. I actually really enjoyed King Aegon. I was like, wow, are we actually getting an interesting character for once? Somebody. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're just going with something completely different for his character this season. So let's just forget the rapist from last season, grapist from last season. Now we're going with the fun king, the dissolute king. That's a fun character to explore. Maybe we can have him take a little bit of responsibility, see a little bit of a character arc. I don't know.
Yeah.
I doubt it, but one can always dream. One can always dream. Anyway, so Alicent may cling to the idea that with his dying breath, Viserys proclaimed Aegon as his heir, but few others believe it. This was a coup, and it seems that as time goes by, more people are figuring that out.
Okay.
I mean, I think that it would have been helped in figuring out that it was a coup if the aunt of the princess hadn't burned to death a couple hundred people. That might have made the little people side with the royal that wasn't immediately flambeing them.
Yeah.
Would a rat catcher and his burly assistant really be able to gain access not just to the royal quarters but to the throne room itself? Seems like a real lapse in security.
Yeah. I think you talked about that, right?
Yes, I did. Yes. It's not a lapse in security. It is bad writing.
Yeah.
Why didn't the maid with the intense eyebrows warn anyone about the muscly interloper who couldn't work a rat trap? Is she a secret black sympathizer? Well, maybe if they explain that, but that still cannot explain why there was almost nobody there. And that could have been explained. And also, people are putting it on Sir Kristen as he was being raped by the Queen Regent.
Yeah.
It's not on him. She's the boss. Because he's the chief guard. Well, first of all, there should be other guards in the palace, and the chief guard is going to have times where he's sleeping and shitting and eating and obviously being raped by the queen. So, I mean, there should be shifts that he's not directly responsible for, like in the immediate sense, and they weren't around. And furthermore, if he is so responsible for the guarding of everyone, maybe Alicent should give him a break with the graping,
Like, just let him do his job instead of graping him constantly. That might be good. Violence count. The murder of young Jaehaerys may have happened just off screen. You know, like, the reason why I'm saying that it's grape is, and it feels to me like this poor fucker got punked out, is that, like, he's not looking like he's having a good time at all. Like, a lot of the time he has this sort of existential horror on his face. It looks like he's now just used to having his sexuality in service of people who can get him killed at a moment's notice on a whim. Like, he's just used to it now. He's just like, yep, this is my life. Violence count. The murder of young Jaehaerys may have happened just off screen, but it was still horrendous, made more so by keeping the focus on his mother's distress. This is what I want to say. You start the scene with an absurd infiltration that is hilariously inept and easy. And then you end the scene with gurgling sounds out of a Monty Python skit. That isn't horrendous. I'm sorry, I can't invest enough in it.
Yeah.
Emotionally. Nudity count. They mostly kept their gowns and armor on. Well, boy, we're really hitting the hard stuff, huh? But the steamy scenes between Alicent and Sir Criston, from a heavy upskirt nuzzling to the final discovery by Helena of the pair together in the Dowager Queen's four-poster bed. Shouldn't Sir Criston be, I don't know, guarding the royal princess? Inability to recognize men's vulnerability raises its ugly head here. I'm not kidding. Like, guys, this guy's been punked out. Like, Rhaenyra definitely did not respect and know. And she really should have, considering the power differential. And now, once again, he's having sex with a woman who can get him killed. Maybe he's into that now. Although the first time he did have a no. The consent here is very questionable. And yet he is being blamed for his boss choosing to fuck him instead of having him have her do his job. What choice does he have? How can you blame this man? How can he be the responsibility? Just like, how can Daemon ultimately bear responsibility for the queen, Rhaenyra, the queen not being clear in what she wants? That's on her. Oh, good Lord. From there, it's a case. Okay. Oh, wait. Additional violence count. Random Britain of the week.
I don't think that's related to the show.
Oh, okay. So that's it. All right.
Yeah.
Garden is typically just unbelievably chauvinistic and incapable of seeing the world outside of their very, very heavy black and white gender binary.
Yeah.
Like, women are victims. No, sorry. Men can't be victims and everybody else can. That's it. That's their gender. You know, men are responsible. Everybody else is just a victim. This is what, okay. Oh, all right, here's their disclaimer. This is what we're up against. Teams of lawyers from the rich and powerful are trying to stop us publishing stories they don't want you to see. Lobby groups with opaque funding who are determined to undermine facts about the climate emergency. Oh, good. Let's not even go there.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit of a digression.
Yeah, it's a digression. I just wanted to see what they had to say for themselves. Oh, they're being prosecuted. The Guardian.
Yeah, well, they're struggling to pay their bills because their people are not really tuning in, so they're trying to find ways to like get people to like keep them running.
Mm-hmm.
Although they're probably getting money from the government. Let's be real. They're probably doing okay. So. All right.
Okay. All right. Okay, am I still there? All right.
Yeah, you're still here. Do you want to? Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you got? Let's take a look at the comments. Let's see if anybody's being feisty.
Guardian doesn't have comments.
No, I mean us.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and look at your comments if you have any. Yeah.
No, not too many this time. I think it was a bit quiet because this has been sort of an inconsistent stream.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said,
Someone had a nice comment somewhere in here, but this is a very good and different review of Hot Dragon.
What?
Well, he's saying that the dragon that the review I'm giving of the story here is a very good and different review. Yeah, I know. Like it's this is what happens when you can actually see women's agency and responsibility.
Yeah.
That's all that I'm doing. I'm just applying a lens of recognizing women's agency and the limits of men's culpability and agency. Like in my worldview, there is a limit to what men are feasibly responsible for, can take responsibility for, and have power over. That doesn't mean I have contempt for men. It means I recognize that they are people. And, like as people, there are things they don't have control over. Like Sir Criston does not have control over whether or not he consents to Alicent. And he certainly didn't have control over whether or not he consents to Rhaenyra because he literally said no, and she kept going. And again, like this isn't like it wasn't a coquettish no. It was a no. It was a please stop no. And she just kept going. And now that he's been punked out by her, Alicent's having a ride, and recognizing that he doesn't actually have control in the circumstance because that is his liege. That is the person who has life and death over him. I mean, if you can't recognize that, how do you recognize that there's limitations to men's will at all? Ever. And so, I mean, all I'm doing is applying that lens. Women have responsibility for their actions, and there are limitations to what men can take responsibility for. That's the only lens I'm applying. It's the lens I write from, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still working on the summary of the Captive Eye. So hopefully I'll be able to have. I'm hoping to get like a reading done of my first chapter when I finish the polishing, and show you guys that, so you guys know that I'm actually working on it. I am doing it. Hey, maybe I'll get this done before George R.R. Martin finishes his series, huh?
Maybe.
No, I think I probably will. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope. But yeah, the reason why I got on this Game of Thrones kick is because my story was compared to it. I feel like if everybody who's arguing with me while essentially saying the same thing, like I think the difference is that the people arguing with me are like, well, he writes these losers, these sociopathic losers who are self-destructive in a downward spiral that they can't get out of. And I'm like, okay, but that's what I'm saying the characters are, right? And I think that the difference is that some people sort of appreciate that in their writing and I don't. And I'm not saying that it's bad. Maybe there's something to be said for just mucking around in a world with people who are awful and just can't do anything better or be better or have no moral light. Like even the Starks don't really. I hate to tell you, the Starks aren't really that noble. But to, maybe it's fun to just go into a world where everyone is just depraved and horrible. I mean, it just gets it out of your system.
Well, and then they try to convince you that's just realistic. Oh, it's just realism.
That is a problem. This isn't.
Yeah, this is realism. This is how people are. It's like, really?
That isn't. It is okay.
No wonder people are so uncharitable to each other. You know.
Honestly, that is a problem. This is not realism. Like this is not realism. First of all, it's not realism when it comes to the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages was sort of a transitional period between the kind of morality you see in a centralizing empire, which is more, no offense, it's more Christian approach, and tribal morality. Okay, so it's got some interesting things going on, none of which are really shown in this story. And that's one of the biggest problems is there's no religion. There's no, and for Christians, religion is almost more like a philosophy of or almost like an existential philosophy. Yes, there's a lot of forcing people to believe your beliefs, so it does have that kind of tyrannical aspect. I'm not talking about medieval Christianity, by the way, but it still is like a philosophy of living. Like
what you're supposed to believe, how you're supposed to believe, and there's none of that in there. There's nothing that people are aspiring to, and yet in the Middle Ages they did aspire to things.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had to. Like, how else? Like, it was like part of survival.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna be like, okay, Martin is writing something from the squishy parts of his id, like, you know, you have an id and then you have the stuff that's sort of just, you know, like, you know, like what fruit
Yeah.
it just sort of where it's contacting the ground, it's starting to rot, that squishy stuff. He just scraped that off his id and he's presented it in his story. That's fine, you know. And you wanna just bathe in the squishy, filthy fluid of George Martin's id. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not realistic. It doesn't
No.
describe reality. It's just a fantasy. And, you know, like, if you want to frame it in that way, he's writing sociopathic characters, have no aspirations, don't care about anybody but themselves, and they're going in a downward spiral to self-destruction. Fine. And you want to bathe in that, that's fine. Or you even want to take a message that, hey, this is the trajectory of these kind of sociopathic, self-destructive people. And you're saying, hey, he's just writing a cautionary tale. Don't be like that. That's fine. But it's still not realistic. Like, a cautionary tale is an exaggeration of a human fault, which isn't realistic. Okay? So,
Yeah.
I mean, enjoy it, but don't say it has anything to do with freaking the Middle Ages. All right. Okay, so Brian, did you want to add anything to that? I know that you really been quiet. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's fine. I mean, I don't watch the show, so, but I mean, yeah. It's not my bag, but yeah,
honestly,
like,
I have to be honest, it's not mine either.
yeah, maybe not. But yeah, I think we covered it pretty well regardless. And yeah, you did most of the talking, but that's kind of what's to be expected. So it's okay.
Also, it's not accurate to how women were treated in the Middle Ages either. I want to put that out there.
Of course not.
It's absolutely not accurate. Like, the feminist framework for the treatment of women in the past is ridiculous. And I'm going to just use one example as why. So feminists will say that men were punished for raping or graping women because they had violated the property of some man. But that's not actually the way it worked. Prior to the revolution in jurisprudence that allowed for that allowed people to start accepting fines, prior to that, essentially, if somebody raped your daughter, you would go get your brothers and your sons and your uncles and whatever else. You get all the men of your village together. You'd form a lynch party, and you go murderize that guy. Right? That was retribution. That was justice in that tribal time. Even with the Vikings, there's a lot of stories of women demanding justice for unfair treatment of other female relatives or themselves from their male relatives. So, I was treated badly. It is your honor to avenge me for that treatment. Okay? That's tribalism. So, the revolution, and it is the movement towards a system away from tribalism, is the Weregild system, which is, instead of death, your honor is assuaged with a penalty in the form of money. Right? So if women were violated, the violators were punished by forcing them to pay. And this was an advancement over the previous system, because the tribalist method of murdering instead, honor killing instead, led to these constant sort of like back and forth warfare between tribes that never ended. So to take a fine instead, the intent was to stabilize society by reducing that kind of tribal conflict. And this was a time when fines couldn't be like, there was no police force, there was no jail, there was no like infrastructure like we have today, which developed in like the 19th century, right? So before the 19th century, nobody could be jailed for grape, and nobody could be like convicted. Well, they could be convicted of it, but they couldn't be jailed for it. So in the time between tribes killing men for graping their daughters, they would be fined for graping. That wasn't because women were treated as property. The fine was intended to be punishment for the behavior, but a punishment that didn't result in continuous warfare. So to reduce it actually reduced how much damage grape did to the social fabric. Like,
Right.
Think about this. You grape someone's daughter and your families are at war for the next 200 years. Right? And you are constructing a situation where nobody has peace, nobody can trade. So you change that to fine penalties for various types of sexual aggression. And they had different severity of sexual aggression against women. They didn't have anything for sexual aggression against men at all. So throughout human history, we have protected women from sexual aggression. In those times where people would start to accept a punishment that wasn't killing the family of the entire rapist, they started to accept fines, which led to more social stability. And that low social stability led to the development of the kind of stable society that can sustain a police force and a prison, which then led to the development of imprisonment as a punishment. Okay? But this has nothing to do with women as property. Nothing whatsoever. It's the progression of the stability of human civilizations. In the future, maybe grapists will be punished with gene therapy. And then the feminists of the future will look at how we punish grapists in the year 2535, and they'll look back and they'll be like, oh my God, they prisoned rapists? They imprisoned rapists? That just proves that they treated women like property. Every single age has its means of punishing rapists. And then the feminists of that age look back at the means of punishing rapists of previous ages and say, that wasn't really punishment. They didn't care. They don't punish them the way that we do now. And yet, in every age, our punishments evolve, like to be consistent and applicable and possible within that age. And every age, we choose to punish rapists of women. And that is somehow oppression of women. It is ridiculous. It's just like the age of ultimate oppression of women is always half like a generation ago. Like when I grew up, guys, the great age of oppression of women was like the 50s and 60s, because it was a generation before when I went to college, right? Well, maybe a bit more than a generation before I went to college. All right. Later, I watched the age of the great oppression of women go from the 50s and 60s, the 60s and 70s, to the 70s and 80s, to the 80s and 90s, and now the noughties, okay? Why does that happen? Because the great oppression of women is always one generation behind women today, the modern woman, right? And it's ridiculous. It is a never-ending impulse that has no relation to reality. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm good. Okay. Thank you all. I want to say I appreciate you guys for coming on. I know this is a bit different format. It's a little bit more informal. I figure, I want to talk about these things, but I don't necessarily want to clutter up the main channel with them. Although I have been sort of experimenting with cutting them down and putting them on, seeing what channel they work on. So tell me what you think in the comments. I know a lot of you are probably, there's a few of you who really like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And I'm getting a handle on why. And that's really what I wanted to understand. I don't. And I hope you take my criticisms as just, me being funny and poking a little fun at something that I don't completely understand. And don't take it. I mean, because if you enjoy it, if you get pleasure out of it, that's all that matters at the end of the day. All right. So do you have anything, final thoughts, Brian?
No,
Do we have
no, I'm
any-
good.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I will say thank you all for coming. And if you want to send a message after the show ends, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And if you want to support our various contents, feedthebadger.com/support. All right. I guess oh wait, I'm the one who ends this, right?
Yeah, yeah. You probably
Yeah.
should. I mean, okay.
All right. So have a good day, and thank you all for your kind attention. Bye.
Are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to